Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have another episode in our Spoiler Spotlight series in which I talk about, well, spoilers and tell you what my thoughts are on them. But before that, just a quick reminder to please click subscribe if you enjoy these videos. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers and it means the world to me. Much appreciated. And today we're going to be talking about an exciting new commander from March of the Machine Aftermath, and that is Arni Metalbrow. For 2 colors and 1 red, it's a legendary creature, Human Berserker 3/3, with whenever a creature you control attacks or a creature enters the battlefield under your control attacking, you may pay 1 colors and 1 red. If you do, you may put a creature card with mana value less than that creature's mana value from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Wow, what an incredibly strong and cool ability on a red card. We have a bunch of red cards, of course, that occupy a similar niche, but none of them does exactly what this is doing. So we have something like Felden, which is good for putting tokens into play from the graveyard, copies of stuff, that kind of thing. We have the second version of Perforos, which also kind of puts things straight into play from your hand, but you do have to sacrifice them at the end of turn. This doesn't actually require you to sacrifice the cards put into play, and that's pretty unusual for a red card, to be honest. There's usually some sort of massive downside, and honestly, there isn't much downside at all here, and actually, this triggers off of each creature as well. It doesn't just trigger once per turn. Any single creature you attack with, you can pay that 2 mana for as long as you have it available, and then you're just going to be able to put stuff straight into play. The only requirement is that the creatures in your hand need to be cheaper than the one you're already attacking with. There's quite a few ways to get around this, the way I see it. It seems like it's going to work pretty well with something like Dash, because you get to rebuy the creature and dash something really expensive, and then bring it back into your hand and play it again and on a future turn. And in the meantime, you're going to be able to put something cheap into play with that mana that you saved. There are quite a few red creatures outside of Dash as well that put themselves back into your hand at the end of turn. That's also pretty nice. It's going to be very good, of course, with cards that cost less to cast, that have reduction costs. There's actually quite a few of those cards in red as well. And we can, of course, dip into artifacts, or something like Metalwork Colossus is going to be really sweet because you can attack with it each turn and pay 2 mana each turn to put almost anything into play from your hand, because almost everything in your deck is going to be cheaper than it. So this works really well with cards that have cost reduction. At that point, you're saving yourself a ton of mana and sending a ton of damage towards your opponent's face. It's also going to work really well with cards that enter attacking. I don't think there's that many of those in red outside of tokens, and of course tokens don't work that well with this because there's nothing that costs less than 0 in Magic. But if you can find a way to put creatures into play attacking or create token copies of creatures, then you can still use the mana value printed on the original card to calculate this, so it can work pretty well with that too. Because of that, something like Delina Wildmage is going to work really well with this deck, since she's making tokens that are copies of something else that are coming in tapped and attacking. Rionia can also work really well. We do want to be playing cards that create token copies, because that way we can double up on this effect. A lot of those cards tend to be instants or sorceries, so they're going to work really well with Rionia, which is then going to create a bunch of token copies, which we can pay mana for each single token copy. Felden himself is going to work really well by making token copies of creatures that are already died. They retain their original mana value, so this just seems really sweet. There's so many different angles you can go with this, and it's an incredibly creative and out-of-the-box red commander, and I love to see it. The only issue is, of course, going to be keeping your hand full, because red does have a tendency to struggle with keeping a full grip, and if you don't really have that many cards in hand, then this doesn't do as much because you can't really keep putting stuff into play. So yeah, make sure you stock up on the card draw if you're playing this card, but this seems incredibly sweet and I can't wait to build a deck around it. So there you have it. Those have been my thoughts on this new spoiler. What do you think about this card? Please let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel, and until next time, take care. Woo!